Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz, and this season we will be unpacking real trends, hot topics in the workplace around allyship and inclusion. Our goal is that each week you leave with tangible tools, information, practical strategies that you can take back to allies at your organization. Let's dig in to this week's topic.
Hey, listeners. If you are worried about the election, the climate of politics in the United States as well as abroad, you are not alone. There is so much strife around discussing politics, especially in the workplace, for fear that someone identifies differently on the political spectrum or has very different views and maybe values from yourself. Recent study shows that people would rather get a cavity filled than talk about politics in the workplace, which is deeply disturbing and sad. So how do you talk about DEI at work when things are polarizing? So if you are passionate about issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and want more allyship in the workplace, this political polarization, I think, can feel quite the opposite of inclusion. And so we know what we've seen is the last 2 years in particular, from late 22 to now, there has been a lot of anti-DEI sentiment by one particular party. At the same time, organizations are showing continued investment in DEI. But what they are doing is they're scaling back on sharing their data. Things like annual reports that were very transparent in 2020, 21, started to scale back on that. So we know that investment is still consistent or even elevated in many cases as companies seek to attract more diverse talent, seek to broaden the communities of which they hope to serve and their employee bases with still really low unemployment. Retention of good, talented people is critical to business performance. And so what I've seen a couple trends, and first is embedding DEI into your culture. So instead of these flashy proclamations and social media, posts, donations, etc., embedding DEI in your culture starts with a genuine commitment from leadership and followed by a thorough assessment of your current practices and policies. So if you proclaim to be inclusive, you need to have the data to show it, to show that you're improving. You're probably not where you want to be. So have measurable goals, have a strategic plan, make sure that it's a part of your overall strategy for hiring practices, training programs. Have psychologically safe places for dialogue and for that data sharing to occur. We also know that our current and future employees and members of our communities need to care about DEI. Increasingly, we see this, especially with younger folks, making it a non-negotiable. And so they're not really looking for these big, bold actions that seem opportunistic and disingenuous. They're looking for real signs. So what you might look for, if you were interviewing for a company and you are from a diverse group, you're probably going to look for signals that they really care. What was the interview process like? Was it transparent? Who did I meet in the interview process? How was communication? And so think about a steady drumbeat of communications. Don't let your DEI efforts fade into the background with the backlash. Consistent communication is key to fostering an inclusive culture. Share updates on what you're doing with DEI, create milestones, highlight employee stories, provide resources for continuous learning. Communication isn't just about talking, it's about listening. It's about providing feedback. So with that steady drumbeat of communication, reinforce your commitment to DEI, empower your employees to be active participants in the journey. Again, rather than these flashy communications that self-promote, more of a facade, people really want to see a consistent set of communications. And so that could be in newsletters, your DEI council's communications, leadership team spotlights, employee resource group programming, data sharing. So it's tempting, I think, to make these bold statements. It was tempting. It's no longer as tempting with the backlash. Companies aren't wanting that spotlight to shine on them after they've seen some mishaps. Specifically, some big ones with Bud Light last year, with Target, as well as John Deere recently. Tractor Supply. So there's just several case studies you can look to of how not to do it. But 2 things I would recommend. 1, embed it into your culture. And 2, really have that steady drumbeat of communication. People want to know what you're actually doing. They want to know your actual commitment is genuine, it is authentic, and it's not going away with the news cycle. And that is going to win you in the long run, be more relevant to top talent today and into the future.
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. My hope is that you walked away with a tangible tool, insight, or information that you can share with other allies on the journey. If you liked this week's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a tremendous amount to us. We'll be back next week with another hot topic.